Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
What a save by Fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nico Lodeiro leaves absolutely no doubt! The Sounders rule the region! Seattle Sounders is campeón! It's gone! They're gone! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Nice work on your little yacht thing.
And Portland can't say shit.
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder at Heart wrote a commentary that we didn't take Overcome seriously.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes, part of the Sounder at Heart podcast network, sponsored by Full Pull Wines, Haxton's Ferments, and our subscribers. We're recording on Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025. I am your host, Jeremiah Shan. Joining me today is my co-host, Aaron Campo, and our producer, Lickett. Well, the Sounders are coming off a 3-2 win over the San Jose Earthquakes. They are now 3-0-2 since returning from the Club World Cup and are slowly climbing their way up the Western Conference ladder. But at the same time, they also just lost another starter. Jordan Morris separated his AC joint and will be out at least a couple of weeks. It's been a weird stretch with good results sprinkled with frustrating news and sometimes frustrating results as well. Aaron, how would you assess your mood where you are right now? Because it seems like the Sounders are in kind of a weird place.
They are. It's I think that the San Jose game was just like a great example of this, where the highs of seeing Pedro de la Vega have such a breakout performance and, you know, seeing the Sounders battle and get a win in the kind of game that they, you know, have recently struggled to get 3 points out of. It was great. You know, it felt really good coming out of it, but then you've got the lows of losing Jordan, which is obviously a huge blow. And, you know, I mean, I guess if it was going to happen, I'm glad that it happened before the transfer window opened, so the Sounders still have time to you know, maybe address that somehow. And then, you know, you've got the JP news this week that maybe he is going to be back this season. So maybe you don't need to go get a veteran midfielder. Maybe instead you need a veteran forward or something like that. It's just been a lot of ups and downs. And, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, I think that this is a flawed team that I still have some concerns about their mentality at times. And I have some real concerns about their defense, weirdly, because it is just
the defense has been a weird one.
I think that some of that is, you know, the makeshift back line, obviously, that they had to deal with for a while, and then Yamar playing his way back into full fitness. But ultimately, I think a lot of it has been in midfield, right? Like, I don't even necessarily think it's a center backs issue as much as it is just the way that the games have unfolded. The Sounders have not been able to control them the way that they, you know, I think we'd all kind of gotten accustomed to. And maybe part of that is by design. Maybe they're willing to give up a little bit of control and a little bit of defense to, you know, be a more dynamic attacking team. That's another possibility as well. So, but I do think this is a good team. I think this is a team that can make a very deep run in the playoffs. And, you know, I think especially if Pedro is starting to wake up a little bit, and if they find a role that's going to work for him, if Jesus can continue to produce pretty well, you know, if Musovski can produce even at like 70-80% of the level he's produced at so far this year, I think that they're set up really well. But certainly I think everybody would feel better if they had Jordan Morris for the stretch run.
Yeah, it's hard to like. I feel pretty good about Danny Musovski in the short term, and he gave, I think, us every reason, frankly, to believe in his ability to do the job in the short term. This game, he had a couple goals. He had He had one of the passes that opened up the other goal. He had an assist 2 weeks ago. He's not exactly a playmaker, but he's competent with the ball at his feet. He puts chances away that he is on the end of. And, he's not, we had a nice kind of discussion about this in the Discord, but he's definitely not a great defender, but he's not a total disaster, I don't think. But he just doesn't open the game up the same way that Jordan does. And I guess where I'm going with this is that I do feel confident that Musovski can do the job for the short term. I don't think, I think for this team to reach anything like its peak, its heights, it's going to need Jordan Morris to be looking his best. And what's so frustrating is that every time he's gotten hurt, it seems like he's just sort of rounding into form. And it is kind of funny that, he got hurt the first time right after he scored his 100th career goal. And then he got hurt this time right after he scored his he had his 100th. That was just now. The first time he got hurt right after he set the Sounders franchise record, it's the Sounders franchise record for scoring. And this time he got hurt right after getting his 100th goal contribution for the Sounders. And so it's like he hits these milestones and he reminds you of like, oh yeah, he can be this really dynamic, really good player. And then something happens. And this was really a freak situation where I don't care who you are. This is don't talk to me about injury prone stuff when it comes to this kind of injury. Basically what happens is he goes in for a ball over the top. He's actually pulling up. He's not even really challenging for the ball at this point. And Danielle, the San Jose goalkeeper, just goes in hard on a tackle, essentially, clears the ball and sends Morris, head over heels, essentially. He slams his shoulder into the ground, separates his AC joint, and he just had surgery, I guess, today. And so it sounds like the situation is he's going to be in a sling for 6 weeks, and then it sort of becomes, my understanding is it becomes a pain tolerance thing at that point, and it's about how well he can really recover and how quickly. Best case scenario, he gets back in about maybe 2 months. So that would give him maybe 2 regular season games to get back into the swing of things. And then the playoffs, you'd hope that's enough. If he's out much longer than that, it's hard to imagine him ever really getting back up to speed in time to be a contributor, even during the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think too, let's assume that the Sounders, he is back at that point in time, and maybe you can get him healthy to start for the playoffs. But let's also assume Danny Musovski is still playing at the clip he's played at. Right. We had this conversation recently about, should Musovski start over Morris? He's been so good. And I think the answer was a clear no. But I think if he keeps putting up these kind of numbers, he's going to be 15. He's going to have 15 goals on the year, probably towards the end of the year, if he keeps, playing at this clip, and he will have been the starter for most of the season. And I think it does become a more interesting question there of like, maybe Jordan is just a off the bench contributor down the stretch,
right.
But it's such a bummer, man, because after the 2 ACL injuries, he had been pretty much indestructible. And then, he's got the hamstring injury, which I consider that one injury. I don't think it's fair to consider those 2 injuries. I think he just probably shouldn't have been back as soon as he was. And then this one, just a total freak injury, is just so, it's got to be so upsetting for him. Certainly upsetting for me.
It's upsetting. It's upsetting for me. And I think it kind of bums me out that there were so many people that came out of that jumped to the idea that is like, oh, this DP signing is looking like such a bad deal. And I guess I get it in some ways. He hasn't been on the field. And in that way, I understand where they're coming from. I just think it's in such bad, it kind of strikes me as bad taste the guy has been performing when he's healthy. I don't know how you can hold that against him. I don't think I know a lot of people have said he's injury prone, but man, if you go 3 seasons without any serious injuries, I just don't think injuries are a realistic or don't really factor into the calculation of whether or not, how reliable you are at that point. You have shown yourself to be reliable over multiple seasons. To me, I kind of don't love the injury prone thing just because of that, because he had been so durable for 3 seasons up until this year. And the fact that he's suddenly less durable magically at the age of 30, which is not, it's not a year where players just sort of magically start to fall apart. And
right.
I mean, you can find plenty of examples of players who were very healthy at this. In fact, in a lot of ways, players get healthier at this point in their career because they sort of understand their bodies better.
Yeah.
So it's just, to me, it's just sad. It's a bummer. I don't see how you can really be upset at the decisions as much as you just got to be kind of feel gutted for the guy.
Yeah, it's terrible. And it is, I'm biased because Jordan is my favorite Sounder of all time. I love him to death. But he's the all-time leading scorer for the team. He scored some of the biggest goals in club history. He's a local kid. He's played pretty much his entire career here. He clearly loves the club and the city. And there's just this portion of the fan base that just doesn't like him and never has, and has constantly looked for reasons not to. And they
always think that they can do better.
Yeah, I really, really don't understand it. Like I think that in some ways he is sort of the avatar for people's frustration with Adrian's lack of ambition or whatever, however you want to frame that discussion. I think he's sort of become the whipping boy, and I just don't really think that's fair to him at all. And this team is clearly so much better when he is playing at his best. Like I like Danny Musovski a lot. I think he is a starter in MLS. I think he can be a starter on a good team. I think the Sounders team with Danny Musovski starting could make an MLS Cup run, but it's just so clear the difference that a healthy Jordan makes, and not just in terms of the team being goal dangerous directly through his contributions, but in terms of the chaos he's able to cause opposing backlines, and also his defensive contributions and his ability to press. I just think he's so clearly a cut above that it makes it that much harder.
Yeah, a great example of the chaos he helps create was early on in I guess it was the second minute, where Reed Baker Whiting plays a ball over the top to him. Danielle kind of slips a little bit coming off of his line and gets caught in no man's land. And Jordan ends up missing the chance wide. He probably should have tried to chip him there, but he tried to sort of like go around the goalkeeper, and he misses the chance. But the point was that it was the kind of the chaotic moment that he created that suddenly had San Jose back on their heels. And the Sounders did sort of struggle to get back into the game after he went out. They gave up a goal on really a pretty well worked goal. I thought, Kalani Kosa-Rienzi got beat a little bit to the end line, and then John Bell gets beat in front of goal. Preston Judd scores the near post. It's a good goal by San Jose. I don't want to take too much away from that. But what I have really liked about this team this year, especially, or in the last couple months anyway, is they've been able to get timely goals. And by timely goals, I mean right after that, like the goal they score in this one came effectively on the next possession after they gave up the goal. They go and they get the next goal, which was obviously important. They then give up the equalizer, 10 minutes later or whatever. But then again, almost right away, they're able to get back on top. And I just thought it showed a resilience that this team has shown this year. And it was funny because last week there was 2 weeks ago, there was some sort of thought that this team was just not as mentally strong as previous teams. And I didn't really like that insinuation, in part because I don't know if I believed it. Just because they had 2 weeks of or 2 straight games of substandard defending and results where they couldn't hold this lead, I didn't think that canceled out, a much longer stretch of when they've been able to show this resiliency and being able to sort of fight through things. Either way, I thought this game was a good illustration of that resiliency. Tim Foss actually wrote in post-game pontifications this week that it was sort of like that tub thumping, the Chumbawamba song tub thumping, where they get knocked down and they get back up again. I thought that was a very funny little analogy there. But either way, I really liked the way that they played in this game. Even if I didn't love their defense, I thought that there was a resilience there. There was a attitude of they weren't going to feel sorry for themselves, that they got a couple goals through Jordan Morris's replacement. And really, Pedro de la Vega, maybe we've waited too long to really get into this. Pedro de la Vega had what I felt like was a real coming out party. This was the player that we have been hoping to see all along, I think. And this was really, for me, easily his best performance.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. He looked just like a completely different player. And I think it's tempting to say, well, it's just because he's meant to play on the left. And, now that he's playing on the left, we can get the guy we'd been promised all along. And I mean, I'm not discounting the fact that I do think he looks a lot more comfortable on the left and being in that role. I think that, Brian has said a lot of things in the last couple of weeks really about, well, we want him to play Pedro on the right because we want him to be involved in the buildup and we want him to get more touches. And I understand that impulse, but I think that the player Pedro wants to be is more the guy he was in this game, where he's maybe not involved that much in the buildup, but he is stretching the defense and he's getting the ball in space and he's carrying the ball into the final third. And he's cutting inside and he's creating some chaos. And rather than being, sort of the creative force, right? Like almost like a 10 type role playing wide, he just seems more comfortable in that kind of counterattacking role. And so I think that's a really interesting thing to have learned after, a year and a half, that's how he looks his best. And San Jose, I wanted to say I'm okay with the Sounders giving up 2 goals to San Jose because they're a team that scores a ton. By the same token, all of this praise for Pedro should be couched in, the context of San Jose is also
not a great
team that gives up a lot of goals. Yeah, they've given up 42 goals this year. They're easy to score against, right? But it doesn't take the goals off the board. And it doesn't take, especially the goal he scored off the board. That just an incredible goal. One of the best goals I think we've seen from a Sounder in a couple of years, probably. And the assist he had to Musovski was incredible. And he just looked comfortable and confident and capable in ways that he just hasn't this year. Like there wasn't as much of that second guessing, overthinking, trying to create something out of nothing that I think has frustrated people this year. It was just very decisive, just go at him. And I loved it. It was as much fun as I've had watching a Sounder this year, without question. I thought he was incredible. And, he's not going to do that every week, obviously, but if he can give 80% of that consistently, I think everybody would be happy with having that player and feel pretty good about, him taking a DP spot.
Yeah. I mean, if that's the player that we get on a even semi-regular basis, I think you feel suddenly a lot better about the DP spot. And I think you feel just sort of better about the sort of, I guess it was at the very least, there's been a call, I think, from people saying, I just don't get what the Sounders saw in him. And I think this game was at least that. It was at least an example of like, okay, I get it. If this is what the Sounders saw when they scouted him, I get why they liked him so much. And it should be said, he's now up to, and this kind of speaks to small samples and why it's been tough to really judge him by the numbers, but he is on 0.53 goals and assists, non-penalty goals and primary assists per 90. So he's contributing to directly contributing to a run of play goal effectively every other game. I'm not saying that's obvious DP numbers, but those are numbers where you could say, okay, I get it. I understand,
Right.
He's a relatively young player. I'm not struggling to see the promise, at least. And, just for comparison's sake, Albert Rusnak, who is very much a, a DP quality player. He's at 0.71. So there is a gap. I don't want to say there's not a gap, but
Right.
and that's just non-penalty goals. But I really liked it. I like De La Vega. I was good to see him just happy. I think that, one of the things that we've seen, there was the little mini documentary that the Sounders did about him. He had an interview with Brad and Steve on the Sounders podcast, and he is a really likable person. I think anyone that is around him likes his energy. They like his whole vibe. This is one of the things I really appreciated. He went to he was one of the two Sounders who was involved in the Sounders Pride activities, him and Andrew Thomas. And especially as an Argentinian, I don't imagine that comes totally naturally. Like Andrew Thomas has been in this a little bit longer, and he's been in the United States for over 10 years at this point. For Pedro de la Vega to embrace this is not as simple for him, I don't think. And I like that about I just like that he's willing to put himself out there and to try things, and to I think he is a really compelling person who I want to see. Like, frankly, I just want to see him succeed because I like him, but I also really like watching him play when he's out in the open field. He is probably the Sounders' best open field player.
Yeah, Jordan is great on the counterattack, but he can't carry the ball the way Pedro can. Like like Jordan needs to get in behind, right? And Pedro can just sort of create a counterattack by himself in a way that is more difficult for Jordan. Like he's not going to dribble an entire defense the way Pedro showed that he's capable of doing. And that's just, I think it's no secret. I love counterattacking soccer. It's, I think, the most fun thing to watch in the world. And seeing Jordan go down, it's like, oh no, well, there goes that. Right. But then seeing Pedro just have the game he did and give it a whole nother dimension, I think, to the Sounders' ability to create things on the break and to be more dangerous in that phase of the game was really encouraging. And I think, if nothing else, the numbers he's putting up now and having a performance like that in the books, it's like, I think the patience is justified, right? Like, I think at this point you can say, I think most people can say, I'm willing to give him a run of games, and we'll figure out where to get Paul and Jesus their minutes, and Ryan Kent and Georgie. We'll figure out how to get them their minutes, but Pedro needs a run of games. Ideally, hopefully on the left. But I'd also like to see, now that he has a little more confidence, now that he has a game like that under his belt, maybe he can play on the right. Like, maybe the Sounders can start switching wings again, a thing that they have done a lot over the years to great success and seem completely incapable of doing now. Maybe they can do a little bit more of that now that we've seen how dangerous Pedro can be on the left. And, we know that Jesus can be dangerous over there and capable. And I think Rothrock can do Rothrock things pretty much wherever he is on the field. So I feel pretty comfortable that he can, cause havoc wherever he's lined up. So yeah, it's exciting. It's for somebody who is, I think both of us have been Pedro defenders and, preached patience and had people question our sanity at times for that, which is, hey, fair enough. But, and obviously I don't think that's been vindicated fully yet. It's one game, but like you said earlier, it's pretty clear now to see, for the first time, I think this is what the Sounders paid for. This is why he keeps getting minutes. This is why they're comfortable hanging on to him and not actively trying to move him, because he's capable of doing things like that.
Absolutely. And it should be also said, Jesus Ferreira had another solid game, not necessarily a standout game, but he is rounding into form as well. He is showing to be a competent player. I think I've mostly liked what I've seen from Ferreira over the last few months. And, you can see the good news is that even without Jordan Morris, there does feel like enough talent here to support a coherent offense. They have finally ticked above their scoring average from last year, which is good to see. They're at like 1.6 goals per game. They finished last season at 1.5. So that was good. That's like a very minor footnote, but it was still something I've been tracking. So that was good to see. And it looks like this is a good offensive team. Since the Club World Cup, they have now gone, like I said, they've gone 3-0-2, but they've also scored in that time 12 goals. So they're averaging better than 2 goals per game since the Club World Cup. Now, the flip side is that this defense, which I think for a long time, we've just been sort of assuming would figure it out. And I don't want to say that that's not going to happen, because I still think if they can settle in on a defense, that they might actually be like, the number of times that we've seen their first choice defense together is pretty limited. And you have to go all the way back to the Dallas and San Diego home games, which were over 2 months ago, to find the last time that they've started the same back line in 2 consecutive games, which I think speaks to how much trouble they have had just fielding a consistent defense. They've had to go through, I believe, 6 or 7 different center backs. So it's Yamar, Reagan, Kim, Hawkins, Bell, Alex. Is that it? Just 6?
I think so.
Okay, so they've had 6 different center backs. They've had to use at least 3 different left backs. They've had to use, I believe, 3 different right backs. They've had to use 2 different goalkeepers. It's been tough. And I think right now, the thing that's a little frustrating, more than a little frustrating, is that I don't know who their preferred, I don't even know who their starting defense is right now, in part because, we had this, we didn't really talk about it because you and I didn't record last week. We haven't gotten as deep into this, but Nuhu getting himself sent off, and then him he got suspended 2 games, and now there's a unclear timeline for when he's going to actually get back into the team. I don't think he's going to start this week, which I think I'll take as a good sign. And so my hope is that Reed Baker Whiting is able to establish himself in it and get into the starting spot, in part because I'm tired of Nuhu's antics, but also because I do think Reed offers a genuine upside that Nuhu doesn't offer. Now, I don't want to, totally slag off on Nuhu, because I do think he's a good defender. I don't think he committed some sort of capital crime, but I do think that he has shown himself to be unreliable in the sense that he can't just avoid doing dumb stuff. And that's a big problem. And Reed, I think, has some genuine upside in terms of his ability to defend. He did commit a few dumb fouls in this game that almost got the Sounders in a lot of trouble. So that should be said. But he also provides much better link-up play. He and Pedro looked very good on the left. And I would hope that the Sounders give him a decent run of games to see what he can do.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that Reed is likely to ever be a plus defender. I think the extent to which he is not capable of playing defense is a little overblown. And I think he's not going to get better without a run of games to get better. Training is not real games. The pressure is different. The circumstances are different. The Defiance is not MLS level play. He needs to play against high level competition, if for no other reason than to figure out, is he going to have what it takes to play fullback at this level? And I think he does offer quite a bit more going forward than Nuhu. I don't think that's a super controversial statement. And I've said before, I can live with the mental mistakes and dumb fouls from a kid much more easily than I can from a veteran. And because it's growing pains, right? I mean, Nuhu had these growing pains, and it turns out they weren't growing pains. He just never grew out of it. You'd hope that Reed could, but maybe not. But you're not really going to know unless he gets a chance to show that he is capable of growing out of it, and to show that he's capable of being a sufficient defender at this level. But I mean, I think that people who believe fullbacks are primarily defenders and that's their first responsibility are probably going to be more on the wanting Nuhu to get back to the starting job, sort of in that position. And I totally get that. I think that's valid. But I think for me, especially for the way this team wants to play, you have got to get some kind of attacking contribution from your fullback if you're going to play with fullbacks. If you're going to play with three in the back, Nuhu doesn't need to do anything going forward. But if he's going to be a left back, he needs to contribute in the attack. And he is such a net negative in that phase of the game that I think it really just hurts his overall value proposition. And he's clearly a better defender than Reed. Clearly, there's no question about it. But is he a better overall left back? I'm not sure that I think he is. And like you said, I think the upside that you get with a younger kid, maybe potentially putting it together and figuring it out, he's got to have the nod right now, even before you consider the other stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think the other thing with Reed is that this is a player who is going to be out of contract at the end of the year. He is someone who I think potentially is a U22 contract type of player. And the Sounders need to know if it's worth giving him that kind of contract, because that's, potentially real money. That's a real commitment. And I think they owe it to themselves as an organization to see what they have in him. And that doesn't mean Nuhu can't be a useful player on this team. I just don't know that he is a starter if you want to play the kind of football that the Sounders seem like they want to play right now, which is a little more attack oriented than they have been. And they need someone who can go both ways in terms of offense and defense. And also they need to hopefully settle in on a starting center back pair, which is no fault of, I don't think Brian Schmetzer would disagree with this at all, but they have been rotating. They've had to force, they've had to play different. I just said that they haven't played the same starting defense 2 weeks in a row for a couple months. It's basically the same amount of time. It's been a little less time, but basically since before the Club World Cup that they've even started the same two center backs in back-to-back games, which is a huge problem. Now, it looks like Jackson Reagan is honestly playing the best soccer that he's played for a while. Like, that's a great piece of news. He didn't get to play this week because of yellow card accumulation, which we don't need to get into, but he has over the last couple months been playing about as well as we've seen him play. And Yeimar should be back and healthy this week. I hope that he is closer to 90 minutes fit. He played 45 minutes against Colorado. Then the game sort of fell apart as soon as he left the field. He played 60 minutes against San Jose. So hopefully this is a 90-minute performance and we're back to that stability. And maybe that alone is enough to give the Sounders a little bit more of the defensive prowess that they have kind of been missing. They have given up already 32 goals this year. So we're 23 games into the season. They gave up 35 all of last year.
Right.
They're going to blow past their goal total. Now, granted, last year was a all-time great defense, but what's frustrating is that most of the pieces are still here. They just have not been able to stay on the field together.
Yeah, the Sounders defensively are bang average in MLS. They're, I think, 7th in the West and 16th overall. So maybe slightly below average, but not by any significant margin. They are an average defensive team this season, but they have, I think that the run that this defense has had going back to, when was the last time they didn't have an elite defense? 2017?
2022, they weren't great defensively.
Yeah.
But for the last still, 2 full seasons, they were like the best defense in the league.
Yeah. And, we'd kind of taken that to granted, I think, to some degree. But I also think there's something to the idea that, like, if you don't have a great attacking team and you don't have the talent you need to have a great attacking team, or you don't have a system you need to have a great attacking team, but you can have an elite defense, why not sell out to do that? Like, why not just make that your thing, And I think that's to some degree what we saw last year, especially. The Sounders are a very dynamic attacking team. the last couple of months of the season. And, I think Brian is a coach who appreciates defense and organization, but I don't think that he is a defense first coach as a rule, the way I think a lot of people assume he is.
I think he's a much more pragmatic coach.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And right now, I mean, I think especially while Yamar was out, the Sounders' best chance to win games was to outscore people. So,
Well, and I think that they sort of made a commitment that they're going to commit a little bit. They're willing to commit more numbers forward, even if that means they're going to suffer a little on the defensive side. I will say that I think one thing about the defense that I've been mostly pleased with is, even though Andrew Thomas has given up now 7 goals in 3 games, which is obviously not great. No, 8 goals. Sorry, 8 goals in 3 games. No, 7 goals in 3 games. 7 goals in 3 games. Yeah. He is at least showing that I don't put a lot of those goals on him. Now,
right.
A hilarious 4 of those are penalties. Yeah. You sort of just throw your hands up. One of those penalties was, of course, his fault. So it's not like they're getting carved up. It's not like he's just giving a bunch away. He did, and I thought he looked mostly pretty good against San Jose. Like, I thought he did, he probably helped the Sounders. I think without him, it's plausible to think that they don't get that win. He does get a finger on the Christian Espinoza free kick there towards the end, which ended up coming off of a rebound, and he made another save on Jesus or Joseph Martinez on the doorstep, which didn't count technically, but he did get a finger on that to push it off the crossbar. So good for him. And I feel mostly comfortable with him in goal. I don't think, again, we've said this before, I think where he suffers a little bit is in more of the soft skills of goalkeeping, which is organizing and doing these things that are sometimes hard to quantify. But he is a great shot stopper. He is not as, like, at one point last year, I was really worried about his distribution. He is not a great passer. I don't think anyone is going to say that otherwise. But then, of course, I don't think Steph Fry is a great passer either. I feel totally comfortable with him holding it down at least through Leagues Cup. And if it has to go on longer than that, then I'd be fine with it.
Yeah, I think that there are also questionable decisions that I think people have forgotten Steph Fry made a lot of in his first season as a starter, right? In Seattle, obviously. Like, goalkeepers are just, they have weird aging curves, and their mistakes are a lot higher profile. I think he's capable of figuring those things out. I'm super high on Andrew Thomas. I think he's looked quite good. The penalty was a very frustrating one because I don't think it needed to happen. But I mean, he was also in a situation where he had to make a decision because his defense had gotten totally blown open, and ideally you're not putting your goalkeeper in that kind of situation. So yeah, I'm very comfortable with him. And based on what we've seen from him so far this season and last season, even going back that far, when Steph is ready to hang it up, finally, I feel pretty comfortable with him being the guy that we stick with for at least the season to see if he can cut it at this level. Cause I definitely think he can. I think he's a very good goalkeeper with a really good future.
Yeah, I would totally second that. Well, this is probably a good place to call it a segment. We're going to come back. We're going to talk a bit about the transfer market. And I think what we're probably going to do is just power rank our desires for the summer transfer window, which will open up next week, or actually on the 27th. So I guess that's Monday. Is that right? Probably Monday.
I think so. Yeah.
I guess I could look at the calendar. Why not? Yeah. Sunday. That's actually Sunday. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we want to see happen in the transfer window. You're listening to Nos Arietes.
Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes Nos Arietes, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. We've been independent since August of 2023, but need your support to make sure it continues. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible by your continued support. Memberships start as low as $25 a year, which not only helps make podcasts like this one happen, but also gets you access to everything we produce. If you're able to support us at higher levels, starting at $75 a year, you gain access to a host of other perks, most notably entry into our members-only Discord, where the smartest, funniest, and most engaged commenters share their thoughts and ideas. To find out more, just visit sounderatheart.com and click the subscribe button in the top right corner. Thanks for listening.
Nos Odietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Haxon Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Haxon Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at haxonferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to haxonferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Haxon Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart podcast network. Welcome back to Nos Odietes. So we are going to talk summer transfer window. Not a lot of active rumors out there yet, but we do have a wish list. And so we're going to go ahead and power rank our summer transfer window wish list. There's a few different kinds of items here. So we'll just start at the bottom. Number 5. We want to see them pick up a fullback. Presumably someone who can, I guess a left back specifically. Full right back feels pretty set, but I wouldn't mind someone else coming in to compete for minutes at left back right now. Even if it was a veteran who's only going to be here for a couple months.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think especially if you want to give Reed the job and you don't want to have to give it back to Nuhu if that doesn't work out, I think having another option there could be useful. And I think also just having another left-sided player that could play in it, like as a left winger, even if you're trying to protect a lead, like that was pretty common in the Jovan Jones days, or in the they've done it with other guys who I'm blanking on right now, but I think that would be a nice option to have there as well. So.
Right. And I think probably what makes sense is to go within the league. I haven't done like a complete survey of what's available out there, but I would imagine there are soon to be out of contract left backs who might be available for a draft pick. Let's just say, like, I don't think they need to break the bank. This is something that someone that can just get the job done, break in case of emergency, that emergency being that Reed is just not working out and Nuhu cannot get out of his own head. And then number 4, I think this would have been a lot higher if not for the news this week that João Paulo may actually be back within a few weeks. But I wouldn't mind the Sounders bringing in a defensive midfielder, because it does feel very obvious right now where we sit today that they do not have faith in their defensive midfielder depth.
Yes, I think that's an understatement. I'm really worried about Christian and Obed being able to hold up over the course of the whole season. Christian has been very durable, but players are durable until they're not. And Obed, I think, is going to easily eclipse his, previous highs for minutes played. Probably sometime in like August would be my guess if current trends hold. So, the Sounders have already played in 3 competitions this year. It's crazy, and they've got another one coming up. They've got a 4th coming up. They've still got the playoffs. They've still got 14 MLS games left, something like that. So,
it depends on the playoffs. They've got 11 regular season games.
11 regular season games left. Sorry,
but if they make the playoffs, 14 potentially.
So it's even with JP, potentially coming back, I think that they could use another body there. If for no other reason, like if you go up 3-0 in the 70th minute, let's say, that feels safe. halftime probably, not as safe as it once was. You'd like to have somebody you could be able to pull Christian for or something like that. But as an aside to this, there have definitely been misdiagnoses before with players who have had injuries that they couldn't shake, that they found out were something different than they originally thought, all that kind of stuff. Have you ever heard of a player being diagnosed with a torn ACL and then finding out that it wasn't actually torn? That's a new one on me. I'm sure it's happened, but
I'm with you. I feel like it's happened before, and I don't know what the process is that they go through to assess a torn ACL to begin with. Like,
yeah,
I'm not a doctor. I would assume there were some medical tests that were done, like not just like, oh, does it feel like you tore it? Oh, you've done it before. That probably is a torn ACL. But it is, I know for me, it did seem a little weird that it was his same ACL. And that is pretty rare where a player will tear the same ACL twice. That is something that doesn't usually happen.
Yeah.
And so that seemed weird, but presumably some doctor signed off on that diagnosis. So yeah, I don't know what to make of that. It's a little concerning. I'm not in the mood to look a gift horse in the mouth though. And if that means that he didn't have a torn ACL and all they had to do was clean out some stuff in his knee, great. Like, okay, we can deal with the misdiagnosis later. But if you're telling me that should be fine in a few weeks, great for us. I still wouldn't be against the idea of bringing in another defensive midfielder.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't expect these two, especially these last two, I don't expect to be blown away. Give me a body who can compete.
Yeah.
That's what
Adam
I'm asking
Moffat.
for here.
2025 Adam Moffat would be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that.
I feel like he's a guy we bring up a lot on this show around the transfer window.
Yeah, because he was just like the classic, you're just bringing this guy in to do a job for a few months. And he didn't do great, I guess, but he was kind of that quintessential, that's why he was here. All right. So this is where it gets a little bit more interesting, I think. Number 3, you and I talked about this. It might be time to trade Nuhu. That would be not our top goal, but trading Nuhu and then presumably using that space to, that all of a sudden then pulls get another fullback up into the rankings. But we're treating these as independent things. If they can find a trade partner for Nuhu, he is in his last guaranteed year. They have an option for next year. It would be great if they were not in a position to have, like, I would be shocked actually if they declined his option.
Yeah.
But I would rather not be in a position to have to worry about that, to be honest with you.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that Nuhu could probably benefit from a change of scenery. He's been here a long time. And I think that there's clearly some frustration on his part. I mean, it's easy to forget that, last year he was part of like a sort of a locker room revolt that ended up with him being suspended. I think that there's part of him that's probably not super happy with his role. I don't want to psychoanalyze anybody, right? But it just feels that way to me. Like it's a situation where everybody could benefit from a change of scenery.
Yeah, it does. It feels like a breakup that from a distance you can see needs to happen. And when you're inside of it, it feels like, no, we can figure this out. But it does genuinely feel like maybe both parties would be better off. And I think part of the problem, frankly, is that the Sounders have sort of treated Nuhu like, oh, he's just going to be Nuhu. And there is this inherent lack of maturity that they sort of just put up with because he's a likable guy. And I kind of wonder if that hurts him. Like he's just not developing the way that he should because he's able to get away with too much.
Yeah. I mean, it does frustrate me sometimes the way Brian will talk about Nuhu and some of the things he does in contrast to the way, and then the way he talks about other players doing things that are not nearly as serious as some of the things Nuhu has done. And I don't think Nuhu's like a bad guy. Like, he seems like a wonderful guy. He seems like a blast of a guy. He seems, his energy is great. I just think it's probably time for him to have some new surroundings and a new situation. And also I just think the way the Sounders play now and seem to want to play is just not good for his skill set. I think there was a time where he was the perfect left back for this team, and I just don't think that's the case anymore.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, we're at number 2, and we decided that's where this is not. Maybe a lot of people would assume this would be our top priority. It is not our top priority, but it's high up there. We want to see a U22, and that's sort of like we're classifying this as it doesn't matter what position this player plays. We just want to see that U22 spot used.
Yep. Yeah, I think that for the good of the vibes, the Sounders should be spending some money. This is the one place they can do that. And, they've been more or less promising that they were going to sign U22 for a while now. And, I think
they have.
Last season, we swore up and down coming into the window that they were going to do it. And they didn't do it. And it was very frustrating. And,
sure was.
I thought they would do it this offseason, and they didn't do it. And I'm less convinced now than I was last summer transfer window that they're going to do it, because fool me once, etc. But I think it's a big mistake if they go another window without signing an external U22. I'm all for giving Obed a U22 deal. I'm all for giving Reed a U22 deal if he shows something over the next little while. But you've got to spend money sometimes. And if you're not going to do it, stop, just stop pretending. Stop pretending like you're going to do it. Stop, or stop looking for the perfect unicorn situation, and, just take a little bit of risk. Buy a lottery ticket.
Yeah. I think kind of where we are with this is it isn't necessarily about finding the perfect fit. It's about showing that you care enough to pull the trigger. Yeah. And but at the same time, it's our top priority here is signing number 1 on our power ranking list of things we want to see the Sounders do. Sign a forward.
Yeah.
Sign that might be a veteran. Ideally, it's a U22, but sign a forward who can come in and compete for minutes. And this is sort of hedging against Jordan Morris's ability to make a full recovery in time to play for this season. And I like Danny Musovski. I think he's probably your starter, but I don't necessarily feel great about Osaze De Rosario as the backup, in part because I don't think he's scored a goal since the Sounders signed him.
Yeah.
And if they have, it might have only been, I guess maybe the Timbers game was right after he got signed, but he's not, his hot start has cooled off a ton, I guess is where I'm going with this.
Yeah. And I think the thing that worries me is that we've seen a lot of evidence this season that if Brian does not trust his backups, the starters are going to keep playing.
Exactly.
And it does not appear as though he is necessarily trusts De Rosario to do a job at this level yet. Right. Which, I think is fine, is understandable. I mean, I think he was largely signed because the Sounders were worried about striker depth the first time around. And
right. Yeah.
That's not to say he didn't earn his contract, but I think maybe there was a little bit more urgency to get him signed for that reason. And I think that, like you said, a U22 is the ideal scenario. I have a feeling, based on nothing other than the fact that it's been a while since we've heard any updates, that the Noah Ohio thing is probably not going to happen. But that profile of striker, I think, would be great. Somebody that you'd feel pretty comfortable with as your backup, that could also play out wide if they need to, that gives you a little more flexibility. So hopefully they've got somebody like that, but if not, go find somebody that can just eat some minutes occasionally and not, put you in a situation where Danny Musovski has to play 90 minutes week in and week out.
Yeah. I don't think you want to be in a situation where Danny Musovski is, even short term. I would hate to feel like the Sounders are playing him 90 minutes every game. Just because they don't have any other options. Osaze De Rosario can potentially fill in a little bit. I suppose we're going to see more Jesus Ferreira in that spot. Maybe that opens up some other possibilities, but it would be nice to have a forward that Brian trusts to eat some minutes, even if that's what it is. I think that's probably our top goal right now in terms of I'll just say they got to do something this summer. I realize that they aren't going to sign someone just for the sake of signing someone, but man, I really wish they would. I'm so tired of just talking about this narrative, and I realize I could just stop talking about it, but it's real. Like they got it. They haven't signed someone in the summer since Leo Chu.
Yeah. And also, like, you have clear needs and cap space. Right. If you are just signing someone just to sign someone, somebody's not doing their job. And I have a hard time believing that's the case based on the things we know about the way, the front office operates. I think that we're not going to sign someone just to sign someone is a really convenient way of saying, I'm only going to spend X amount of dollars and none of the guys that I'm willing to spend on are good enough for me to want to sign off on them signing. And that sucks. That sucks. Spend more money then. Like, you need at least one guy that is going to be.
I'll just say, Adrian, give Craig the budget he needs to make a real signing. That's what I'm asking for. That's that's plain and simple. Give the people that are making soccer decisions enough money to make the type of signing they are comfortable making, because this is getting super tiresome.
Yes, very much so.
And before that's what we have. I did want to at least address this because it's a thing that happened today, and it's something that we'll probably talk a little bit more on Nico and I's show at the end of the week. But Hervé Diesse, the Tacoma Defiance coach, got fired today. I don't have a lot of information right now. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more information tomorrow. My understanding is that it's not as simple as they didn't like the results on the field. I think there was probably some other conflicts, some other stressors going on there. It doesn't help that in their last game, they blew leads of 3-0 and 4-1 and lost 6-4. But that may have been indicative of maybe something else going on. But it's been a kind of a weird season for Defiance. They had some real highs. They had a great run in the Open Cup, and really since that Open Cup run, they've struggled to sort of find consistency, and I would imagine that's part of it. But I don't know. I don't want to get too far out of my skis, because I think Nico probably has done a little bit more reporting on this. But anyway, I just wanted to put it out there just so people didn't think we were ignoring that thing. But with all that said, Aaron, you got anything else?
No, I think we covered it, brother.
Okay. Well, that's a good one. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to our sponsors, Full Pool Wines and Hacks and Ferments. I am Jeremiah O'Shan, signing off for Aaron Campbell and Lickett. This is Nos Audietis, part of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. And remember, you'll never get alone.
I expect a LAFC who's motivated to prove themselves at home, to prove to their fans that they're capable of winning in this league. And it's up to us to really brew in the party.
I feel a lot better than Bob.